The boy's feet were bare. That's the first thing you need to understand about this story. 12 years old, no shoes, standing on a cracked concrete porch at 10:47 on a Thursday night in the kind of neighborhood where street lamps flicker like they're tired of trying. His name was Jalen, and the little girl whose hand he was holding, knuckles white, grip so tight it hurt, that was his sister Maya. She was 8. Maya's face was wet, not crying anymore, past crying, that kind of quiet shake that happens when a child has run out of tears, but the fear hasn't run out of them yet. She clutched a teddy bear missing one ear, pressed it against her chest like it could stop her heart from pounding so hard. Behind them, through the torn screen door, came the sounds. Glass breaking. A man's voice, slurred, ugly, rising. The thud of something heavy hitting wood, then a crash that made both children flinch like they'd been struck. "Where the hell are you? Get back in here!" Jalen didn't move. His jaw was tight. His shirt was torn at the collar, ripped, not worn, and there was a bruise forming just below his left eye that he'd have to explain to his teacher tomorrow. If there was a tomorrow. If his father didn't... He stopped that thought, squeezed Maya's hand tighter. "Jalen," she whispered. Just his name. But it was a question and a prayer and a desperate plea all wrapped into 2 syllables. He looked at her, tried to make his voice steady, failed. "I know," he said. "I know." The smell drifted through the screen door, stale beer, something sour underneath it. The house smelled like that all the time now, ever since Mama left, 6 months ago. Jalen remembered the exact day, March 14th. She'd kissed them both on the forehead and said she'd be back. She didn't come back. Social services came instead. Once, a woman with a clipboard and tired eyes who asked questions and wrote things down and made promises that floated away like smoke. Nothing changed. Their father, Curtis, still had his keys. Still had his job at the warehouse, most days. Still had custody. Still had fists. Inside, Curtis stumbled against something and roared. "I said, get in here! You think you can hide from me? I'll teach you respect." Maya whimpered. Her whole body shook. Jalen wrapped his arm around her shoulder and pulled her close, feeling her small frame tremble against his. Here's what breaks your heart about a moment like this. Jalen wasn't surprised. This was his normal. This was every few nights. The drinking, the yelling, the hands that were supposed to protect him turned into weapons. The neighbors heard it all. Of course they did. The walls were thin as paper, but their doors stayed locked. Their curtains stayed drawn. Nobody came. The police had been called twice. Both times, Curtis sobered up enough to smile and shake hands and explain that kids will be kids, you know how it is. Just a little discipline, nothing serious. Both times, the officers left. Both times, things got worse afterward. Jalen learned something from that. He learned that the system wasn't coming to save them. The teachers who noticed the bruises but believed Curtis's lies, they weren't coming. The neighbors who whispered but never knocked, they weren't coming. The social worker who never returned their calls, she definitely wasn't coming. Nobody was coming. So Jalen did the only thing he could do. He sat on that porch with his barefoot sister and waited for whatever came next. Waited for his father to pass out. Waited for the shouting to stop. Waited for the next blow. He didn't know that help was 3 blocks away. Didn't know that everything was about to change. "Daddy hurts us," he whispered. Not to Maya, not to anyone. Just words pushed out into the empty night. A truth too heavy to hold inside anymore. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked, and then a sound, low at first, a rumble in the distance, like thunder rolling in from far away. But it wasn't thunder. It was something else, something that made Jalen lift his head and squint into the darkness beyond the dying street lamp. Engines. 3 motorcycles turned onto Delancey Street at 10:52 p.m. The man in front rode a battered Harley Road King, chrome dulled by years and miles, but the engine still growled like it had something to prove. His name was Jack Morrison, but nobody called him that. To the people who knew him, really knew him, he was Big Jack. 54 years old, gray beard, thick as steel wool, hands scarred from a lifetime of work, and a few years of war he didn't talk about. He wore a black leather vest over a faded denim shirt, and on the back of that vest was a patch that read, "No kid deserves to live in fear." He meant it. Flanking him on the right was Hank. No last name offered, none needed. Ex-Marine, 2 tours in Afghanistan, built like a refrigerator with a crew cut. He spoke maybe 20 words a day, but every single one counted. The kind of man who could communicate more with a look than most people could with a speech. And behind them, both. Mama Rosa, the only woman in their chapter, though you'd be a fool to underestimate her. She ran crisis outreach for 15 years before she picked up writing. Soft voice, calm eyes, but underneath that gentleness was iron. The kids they helped always trusted her first. She knew how to speak to broken things. They'd been riding late, finishing up a visit to another family 3 towns over, a single mother whose ex wouldn't stop showing up drunk, scaring the kids. The bikers had parked outside her house for 3 nights straight until the ex got the message. That's what they did. That's who they were. Now they were headed home, just passing through this neighborhood, taking the back way to avoid the highway. That's when Big Jack heard it, a child crying, muffled but unmistakable. And then, a man's shout, slurred and vicious, cutting through the night. Big Jack raised his hand. Behind him, Hank and Mama Rosa slowed. Engines dropped to idle. Then silence, except for the sounds spilling from that cracked white house on the corner. Thud, glass, a scream, high and thin, a child's scream. Big Jack's jaw tightened. He looked at Hank. Hank's eyes had gone cold, the way they did when something switched on inside him. Mama Rosa was already swinging off her bike. "Hold," Big Jack said quietly. "Let me see." He dismounted slow and deliberate, boots hitting the cracked pavement with a heavy thud. The street lamp above them flickered, throwing shadows across his weathered face. He didn't rush. Men like Big Jack had learned a long time ago that rushing scared people, especially kids. He walked toward the porch, and that's when he saw them. 2 children huddled together in the dark. A boy, 12 maybe, standing in front of a little girl like he was the only wall between her and whatever was inside that house. Both of them frozen. Both of them watching him with the kind of eyes that had seen too much. Big Jack stopped at the edge of the porch, didn't step up, didn't crowd them, just stood there, hands loose at his sides, voice low and easy. "Hey there," he said. "You okay, little man?" Jalen didn't answer, couldn't. His brain was trying to make sense of what he was seeing. 3 strangers on motorcycles, leather jackets, big men with hard faces. For a terrible second, he thought his father had called someone. Friends, maybe, or people who owed him money. And this was about to get worse. But then he looked at the man's eyes. They weren't hard, not really. They were something else, something Jalen didn't have a word for yet, but it looked like the opposite of everything he knew. It looked like safety. "My name's Jack," the man said. "These are my friends Hank and Rosa. We were just riding by. Heard some noise." He paused. "That your daddy in there?" Jalen's throat tightened. The question sat between them like a landmine. Behind him, Maya pressed her face into his back. The teddy bear smooshed between them. Inside the house, Curtis had gone quiet. The dangerous kind of quiet that sometimes came before the worst moments. Jalen thought about lying. He'd lied before. To teachers, to the social worker, to the police officer who asked why he had a black eye. Lying was survival. But something about this man, this stranger with the gray beard and the patch that said no kid deserves to live in fear, made Jalen tell the truth. My dad hurts us. His voice cracked, broke in the middle like a twig. He hit my sister again, on her arm. It's purple. 3 faces changed. Hank, the big one, went completely still. His jaw clenched so hard Jalen could see the muscle jump. His hands curled into fists at his sides. The woman, Mama Rosa, moved forward slowly, crouching down until she was eye level with Maya. Her voice was soft as cotton. "Hey, sweetheart, I'm Rosa. Can I see your teddy bear?" Maya looked at Jalen. Jalen nodded. Slowly, Maya held out the bear. Mama Rosa took it gently, looked at the missing ear, smiled a sad smile. "He's been through a lot, hasn't he? Just like you." She handed it back. "You're safe now, okay? You're not alone." Maya's lip trembled. And then, for the first time in hours, she nodded. Big Jack hadn't moved. He was still watching Jalen with those steady eyes, reading something in the boy's face that most adults never bothered to look for. "How long?" Big Jack asked. Simple question. No judgment. Jalen swallowed. "Since Mama left. 6 months, maybe." "Anybody try to help?" "The police came. Twice." Jalen's voice went bitter, older than his years. "They didn't do nothing. Social services neither. Dad tells everyone we're liars. Bad kids. The teachers believe him. Everyone believes him." Silence. The street lamp flickered. Then Big Jack nodded once, slow and sure. "I believe you," he said. 3 words. That's all it took. 3 words. And something broke open inside Jalen's chest. Something he'd been holding so tight for so long that he'd forgotten it was there. His eyes burned. He blinked fast, refusing to cry in front of strangers. Big Jack stepped up onto the porch, not towering over them, just present, solid, like a wall between the kids and whatever was coming. "Here's what's going to happen," he said quietly. "You and your sister are going to come with us. We're going to find you somewhere safe tonight. And that man in there?" He glanced at the door. "He's never going to hurt you again." Jalen stared at him. "You can't promise that." Big Jack looked down at him, and for the first time, the corner of his mouth lifted, just barely, not quite a smile. Something harder than that, and fiercer. "Watch me." What happened next changed everything. Not in the way you might expect. No one kicked down any doors, no fists were thrown that night. But sometimes the biggest battles aren't loud. Sometimes they start with 3 strangers on motorcycles who weren't supposed to be on that street, at that hour, on that night. Sometimes rescue shows up in leather and chrome. If you believe that every child deserves someone who'll fight for them, then you're in the right place. Subscribe to Bikers Bite and tap that bell. Because stories like Jalen's are why we do this. Now let's see what these bikers did next. The door rattled. Not opened, rattled. Like something was throwing its weight against it from inside. Curtis's voice came through the wood, muffled but mean. "Jalen, Maya, get your behinds in here right now." Both kids flinched. Maya buried her face in Jalen's side. The teddy bear squeezed flat between them. Big Jack didn't flinch. Neither did Hank. Mama Rosa moved closer to the children, positioning herself between them and that door without making it obvious. "He's drunk," Jalen whispered. "He gets worse when he's drunk." The door shook again. Hinges groaned. "I said now!" Hank took 1 step toward the porch stairs. Just 1. But it was enough. His shoulders squared, his hands loose at his sides, and something in his stance said, "Come through that door and find out." Big Jack pulled out his phone, punched a number, waited. His voice was low, controlled. "Marcus, it's Jack. Got a situation. 2 kids, domestic abuse, active threat inside the house. Need a safe bed tonight and someone from the department who actually gives a damn. Yeah. Delancey Street, corner house, white siding. Hurry. He hung up. Looked at Jalen. Help's coming, but I need you to tell me more. Can you do that? Jalen hesitated. Trust was a foreign currency in his life. Spent too many times on people who didn't deserve it. But something in Big Jack's face made him nod. Mama Rosa knelt beside them. Her voice was warm, honey, slow, and soothing. Jalen, sweetheart, I know this is hard, but we need to understand what's been happening so we can help. Can you tell me, when did your daddy start hurting you? Jalen's eyes dropped to the concrete. His jaw worked. When he spoke, his voice was barely a thread. After Mama left, March, he was sad at first. Then he got angry, started drinking more. He paused. The first time, he said it was an accident, apologized, cried about it. I believed him. And after that? It wasn't accidents no more. Mama Rosa's eyes softened. Not pity. Something deeper. Understanding. Can you show me, honey? Where does it hurt? Jalen looked at Maya. She was watching him with wide, wet eyes. He gave her a small nod. It's okay. And then slowly lifted his shirt. The bruise spread across his ribs like a storm cloud. Purple at the center, green-yellow at the edges. Old damage, healing, underneath new damage. Hank made a sound, low, almost a growl, his hands curled into fists. Mama Rosa didn't react outwardly, but her breath caught. She'd seen abuse before. 15 years of crisis work, but seeing it never got easier. Maya, baby, she said gently. Can I see your arm? Maya looked at Jalen. He nodded again. Slowly, she pushed up her sleeve. Fingerprints. 4 dark ovals pressed into her skin, where a grown man had grabbed an 8-year-old girl, hard enough to leave marks. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Big Jack's voice, quiet as a closing door. How often? Jalen shrugged. The gesture was too casual, too practiced. Couple times a week, depends on how much he drinks. Anybody know? Teachers, neighbors, anybody? They know. Jalen's voice turned hard, bitter. Mrs. Patterson next door hears everything. She just turns up her TV. My teacher, Ms. Williams, she asked about a bruise once. I told her the truth. She called my dad. He told her I fell off my bike. Made me apologize for lying. His jaw tightened. Then he beat me worse that night for talking. Big Jack closed his eyes for a second. Just a second. When he opened them, they were different. Harder. What about social services? Lady came once, wrote stuff down, said she'd follow up. Jalen laughed. A terrible sound, too old for his face. That was 4 months ago. Nobody followed up on nothing. Inside the house, a bottle shattered. Curtis's voice roared. You think hiding out there's gonna save you? I'll drag you back in by your hair, girl. You hear me? Maya started crying again, quiet, shaking sobs that she tried to muffle in Jalen's shirt. Big Jack stepped forward, put himself directly in front of the door. When he spoke, his voice was loud enough to carry through the wood. There's nothing for you out here, sir. Stay inside, cool off. The kids are fine. Silence. Then Curtis's voice, slurred but sharp. Who the hell are you? Get off my property. We're just passing through, making sure everyone's okay. I said get off my property. The door shuttered. Those are my kids, mine. Hank moved up beside Big Jack. 2 men, 250 pounds each, a wall of leather and muscle between the children and that door. They're safe where they are, Big Jack said calmly. We'll wait out here until things settle down. A stream of curses came through the door, then footsteps, heavy, stumbling, moving away, deeper into the house. Jalen exhaled. He didn't realize he'd been holding his breath. He'll pass out soon, he said quietly. He always does, after a while. And when he wakes up? Mama Rosa asked. Jalen didn't answer. He didn't have to. His silence said everything. Big Jack's phone buzzed. He checked it, nodded once. Safe House has a bed. My friend Marcus is calling in a favor with a cop he trusts, one who'll actually file the paperwork right. He looked at Jalen. Here's what's going to happen. We're taking you and your sister somewhere safe tonight. Tomorrow, people who can actually help, legal aid, CPS supervisors, the real ones, they're going to start building a case. He'll just lie again, Jalen said. He's good at lying. Everyone believes him. Not this time. You don't know that. Big Jack crouched down, eye level, man to boy. You're right. I don't know what's going to happen. I can't promise the system won't fail you again. It fails kids every day, and that's the ugly truth. But here's what I can promise. He put his hand on Jalen's shoulder, firm but gentle. I'm not going anywhere. Neither are Hank and Rosa. You're not going to face this alone. Jalen stared at him, searching for the lie, the catch, the moment when this stranger would turn out to be just like everyone else. He didn't find it. Why? Jalen asked, voice cracking. You don't even know us. Big Jack was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough at the edges. 20 years ago, I was a social worker. Young, dumb, thought I could save the world with paperwork and good intentions. There was a kid, boy about your age. I knew his home was bad, knew it in my gut, but I followed procedure, filed reports, waited for the system to work. He paused. System took too long. By the time they moved, that boy was in a hospital bed, brain damage, all because I waited for permission to do what I knew was right. Jalen swallowed. What happened to him? He lived, but he wasn't the same. Big Jack's jaw tightened. I quit the next week, bought a bike, started doing things differently. He gestured at his vest, the patch. No more waiting for permission. No more trusting systems that weren't built to protect kids like you. When I see something wrong, I act. Period. The night was quiet. Even the distant dog had stopped barking. Mama Rosa's voice, gentle. Jalen, we can't make you come with us. That's your choice. But if you stay here tonight, I know. Jalen's voice was small but steady. If I stay, he'll wake up, and it'll be worse, because we ran. That's right. Jalen looked at Maya. She was watching him with those big, trusting eyes, the same eyes that looked at him every night when the shouting started, asking him to make it better. He'd been trying to make it better for 6 months, alone. He was so tired of being alone. Okay, he whispered. Okay, we'll go with you. Maya's hand found his again, small and cold and trembling. Jalen squeezed. Mama Rosa stood, offering Maya her hand. Come on, sweetheart, let's get you somewhere warm. Hank moved toward his bike, already thinking logistics. Big Jack typed something into his phone, coordinates, probably, or instructions for whoever was meeting them. Jalen took one last look at the house, the sagging porch, the torn screen door, the cracked windows that had witnessed every bad thing that happened inside. For 6 months, this place had been his prison. Tonight, it was becoming his past. He didn't say goodbye. Some places don't deserve goodbyes. But here's the thing nobody knew yet. Curtis had heard everything through that thin door. The names, the plan, the mention of safe houses and cops and legal aid, and even drunk, even stumbling, even half-blind with rage and whiskey. Curtis was already thinking, if those kids testified, if they showed those bruises to a judge, if anyone with real authority actually listened this time, he'd lose everything. Custody, his job, his freedom. No, he wasn't going to let that happen. Before we find out what Curtis does next, hit that like button if you're rooting for Jalen and Maya. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Every like, every comment helps more people find stories like this. Stories about kids who deserve better, and the strangers who fight for them. Now let's see what happens when these bikers try to get the kids to safety. Big Jack gave the signal, one nod, that's all it took. Hank moved first. He crossed to Maya, crouched down, and opened his arms. The big man who'd barely spoken 10 words all night suddenly looked like the safest thing in the world. "Can I carry you, little one?" His voice was low, gentle. "My bike's real smooth. You won't even feel the bumps." Maya looked at Jalen. Jalen nodded. She let Hank lift her, one arm around his neck, the teddy bear crushed between them. She weighed nothing to him, 60 pounds of fear and hope and a childhood that had been stolen too early. Mama Rosa took Jalen's hand. Her grip was warm, steady. "Stay close to me. We're going to move quick, okay?" Jalen nodded. His heart was hammering so hard he could hear it in his ears. Behind them, the house stayed quiet. Curtis had gone silent after that last string of curses, probably collapsed on the couch, bottle still in hand. But silence didn't mean safe. Jalen knew that better than anyone. Silence just meant waiting. The engines rumbled to life. 3 bikes, growling in the dark like guard dogs. Big Jack mounted first, then Hank with Maya tucked against his chest, then Mama Rosa with Jalen climbing up behind her. His hands found her waist, gripped tight. "Hold on," she said. He did. And then they were moving, down Delancey Street, away from the cracked porch, away from the stale beer smell, away from the thin walls that had held so many screams. Jalen looked back once, just once. The house was already shrinking behind them. That white siding, that sagging roof, that broken screen door. 6 months of hell, disappearing into the dark. He turned forward and didn't look back again. But here's what Jalen didn't see. A 4th bike, engine idling, parked across the street from the house. Duke. He'd arrived 10 minutes ago, summoned by Big Jack's radio call. 6'4", 280 pounds, arms like tree trunks covered in faded tattoos. He didn't say much, didn't need to. His presence was a statement. He sat on that bike, watching the house, headlamp off, waiting. If Curtis came stumbling out that door looking for his kids, Duke would be there. Not to fight, not unless Curtis started something first, but to stand, to witness, to make sure that man understood one thing clearly. Those kids were protected now. The night stretched on. Inside the house, a light flickered, then went out. Duke didn't move. The safe house was a community center on the east side of town, a squat brick building with a hand-painted sign that read, "New Horizons, Family Services." Not fancy, not impressive. Just clean and warm and run by people who gave a damn. A woman named Ms. Patricia met them at the door. 60 years old, gray locks pulled back, reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She'd been doing this work for 30 years. Nothing surprised her anymore. "Got your call," she said to Big Jack. "2 beds ready in the back room. Kitchen's got sandwiches if they're hungry." Big Jack nodded. "Appreciate you, Pat." "Don't thank me yet. We got work to do tomorrow." She looked at the kids, Maya half asleep in Hank's arms, Jalen standing rigid with exhaustion. Her face softened. "Come on in, babies. You're safe here." The word landed different when she said it. Safe. Jalen had heard adults say that word before. It usually meant nothing, but Ms. Patricia said it like she meant it, like she'd fight someone to prove it. They went inside. The back room was small but clean. 2 cots with actual sheets. A space heater humming in the corner. A window that looked out on nothing but darkness, but at least the glass wasn't cracked. Mama Rosa settled Maya on one cot, pulling a thin blanket up to her chin. The little girl's eyes were already closing, the teddy bear tucked under her arm. "You're gonna stay?" Maya whispered. Mama Rosa brushed hair from her forehead. "I'm gonna stay, baby, right here, all night." Maya's eyes closed. Within minutes, her breathing evened out. Sleep, real sleep, not the half-awake terror she'd been living in, finally took her. Jalen sat on the other cot, didn't lie down, didn't relax. His eyes kept moving to the door. Every creak, every footstep in the hallway made his shoulders tense. Big Jack noticed. He pulled up a folding chair, sat down beside the cot, and said nothing. For a long time, they just sat there. Two people. Silence. Then quietly, "He's not coming here, Jalen." "You don't know that." "I know Duke's parked outside your old house. I know Ms. Patricia's got 3 locks on that front door. I know Hank's gonna sleep in the hallway tonight, and trust me, nobody gets past Hank." Jalen's jaw worked. "It's not just tonight, it's tomorrow. And the day after. He always finds a way. He always—" His voice cracked. He stopped. Big Jack waited. "I'm tired," Jalen finally said. "Not sleepy tired. Bone tired. Soul tired. The kind of tired that 12-year-olds shouldn't know existed." "I know you are." Big Jack's voice was rough, but kind. "You've been carrying a weight that would break most grown men. For 6 months, you've been the only thing standing between your sister and that man. That's not fair. It was never fair. But here's the thing." He leaned forward. "You're not carrying it alone anymore. Starting tonight, we're under that weight with you, and we're stronger together." Jalen blinked. His eyes were wet, but he didn't cry. He'd trained himself not to cry. "Why do you do this?" he asked. "You don't get paid. You don't get nothing out of it." Big Jack was quiet for a moment. "You remember what I told you about the boy I couldn't save in time?" Jalen nodded. "Every kid I help now, that's me trying to balance the scales. Can't ever fully balance them, but I can tip them, one kid at a time." He shrugged. "Some people go to church. Some people volunteer at soup kitchens. I ride a motorcycle and stand between bad men and scared children. We all find our own way to matter." Jalen stared at him, processing. Then, slowly, his shoulders dropped. Just a little. Just enough. "Okay," he whispered. Big Jack nodded. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be busy." Jalen lay down. For a long time he stared at the ceiling, listening to Maya's soft breathing, the hum of the heater, Mama Rosa's quiet presence across the room. Somewhere around 4 a.m., he finally closed his eyes. When the first light of dawn crept through the window, golden and gentle, Jalen was still asleep. For the first time in 6 months, no one woke him with shouting. Morning brought phone calls. Big Jack started at 7 a.m. before the kids were even awake. First call, Marcus Thompson, ex-cop turned private investigator, the friend who owed favors. "I need you to light a fire under someone at the precinct. Those kids have bruises that tell a story. I want an officer with a camera and a conscience at this address by noon." Marcus asked questions. Big Jack answered. By the end of the call, a detective named Ramirez, one of the few good ones, Marcus said, was already en route. Second call, legal aid. Hank made this one. Turns out the silent giant had history with the system. He'd coached at a youth shelter for 3 years before joining the bikers. One of the attorneys there, woman named Sandra Chen, had helped him navigate custody issues for a dozen kids. She owed him nothing. She helped anyway, because that's who she was. "Emergency custody petition," Hank said into the phone. 2 minors, documented abuse. Father still has legal custody. We need a judge who won't drag their feet. Sandra said she'd make it happen. Third call, the aunt. Big Jack had gotten the number from Jalen that morning. Aunt Denise, the mother's sister, lived 3 states away in Georgia. She'd tried to get custody once before, back when their mother first left, but Curtis had blocked it, claimed she was unstable, unreliable, trying to steal his kids. She wasn't any of those things. She was a church secretary with a spare bedroom and a broken heart, watching from 800 miles away, while her nephew and niece suffered. "Ms. Denise, my name's Jack Morrison. I'm calling about Jaylen and Maya." She started crying before he finished the first sentence. By 10 a.m., they had photos. Detective Ramirez, a sharp-eyed woman with no patience for bureaucracy, documented every bruise, Jaylen's ribs, Maya's arm, an old scar on Jaylen's back that he'd never mentioned, shaped like a belt buckle. By noon, they had statements. Jaylen's written in his own handwriting, shaky but clear. Maya's, dictated to Mama Rosa because she was too young to write that much. By 2 p.m., they had a witness, Mrs. Patterson, the neighbor who always turned up her TV, finally broke. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was the two bikers who knocked on her door and asked, very politely, if she'd ever heard anything concerning from next door. Either way, she signed an affidavit, said she'd heard screaming at least twice a week for months, said she'd seen Curtis drag Jaylen inside by his collar, said she was sorry she hadn't called anyone. Sorry didn't fix anything. But her signature on that paper? That helped. By evening, Sandra Chen had filed the emergency petition. A hearing was scheduled for 3 days out. Family court. Judge Morrison, no relation to Big Jack, just a coincidence, was known for actually reading the evidence before making rulings. For the first time, the system was moving in the right direction. 3 days later, Jaylen walked into a courtroom. He was wearing clothes that actually fit, new jeans, a button-down shirt that Mama Rosa had picked out. His shoes had laces. His hair was freshly cut. He looked like a different kid than the barefoot boy on that porch. But inside, he felt exactly the same. Terrified. Curtis was already there. Clean shirt, pressed pants, hair combed. He'd sobered up for this. Probably hadn't touched a drink in 3 days, saving his best performance for the judge. He sat at the defendant's table with a court-appointed attorney, looking like a concerned father who couldn't understand why everyone was making such a fuss. Jaylen's stomach turned. "He looks normal," he whispered to Big Jack. "He always looks normal." "I know," Big Jack said, "but this time, we've got more than his word against yours." The courtroom was small. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights, an American flag drooping in the corner, maybe 30 seats in the gallery. 24 of them were filled with bikers. They'd started arriving an hour before the hearing. 1 by 1, 2 by 2, leather vests and heavy boots, and faces that had seen hard roads. They didn't speak, didn't make a scene, just walked in, nodded at Big Jack, and sat down. Duke, Mama Rosa, Hank, and 21 others, members of the chapter from across 3 counties, all of them dropping everything to be here. A wall of protection, silent and absolute. Curtis noticed. His confident expression flickered, just for a second, but Jaylen saw it. The judge entered. Everyone rose. Court was in session. Curtis's attorney went first, made the expected arguments, discipline issues, difficult children, a father struggling after his wife's abandonment, no history of serious incidents, misunderstandings blown out of proportion. Then Sandra Chen stood up. She didn't raise her voice, didn't need to. She laid out the evidence piece by piece, photos of bruises, medical records from an ER visit 18 months ago. A broken wrist, supposedly from falling off a bike. Mrs. Patterson's affidavit. The social worker's notes from her single visit, documenting concerns about the home environment that were never followed up. And then, the children's statements. Sandra read Jaylen's words aloud. "He hits us when he drinks, sometimes with his hand, sometimes with his belt. He tells everyone we're liars. He says if we tell anyone, he'll make it worse. I tried to tell my teacher. She called him. He beat me for talking. I don't know who else to tell. Nobody believes us." The courtroom was silent. Even the bikers, who'd seen a lot, sat perfectly still. Then Sandra called Jalen to the stand. He walked up slowly, hands shaking, heart racing, but he sat down, put his hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth. He'd been lying for 6 months to survive. Now the truth was his only weapon. Sandra's questions were gentle. Walk us through a typical night. What happens when your father drinks? Where does he hit you? Have you ever asked for help? Jalen answered. His voice shook at first, but it steadied. Word by word, sentence by sentence, the whole ugly truth. And then Curtis's attorney stood for cross-examination. Isn't it true that you've had behavioral problems at school? Sometimes I get in trouble. Isn't it true that you've lied to teachers before? I lied because I was scared. Just answer yes or no. Have you lied to teachers? Yes, but no further questions. The attorney sat down, looking satisfied, but the judge was watching Jalen's face. The fear, the frustration, the desperate hope that someone would finally believe him. And then the judge looked at the gallery. 24 bikers sitting silent, not threatening anyone, just present, just witnessing. Judge Morrison was quiet for a long moment. I've reviewed the evidence, she said finally. The photographs, the medical records, the testimony, the affidavit from the neighbor. She paused. I've also observed the demeanor of the child on the stand. He wasn't coached. He wasn't rehearsed. He was scared, but he told the truth anyway. She turned to Curtis. Mr. Davis, I'm not finding you guilty of a crime today. This isn't a criminal proceeding, but I am making a finding of fact. This home environment is not safe for these children. Curtis started to speak. His attorney put a hand on his arm. I'm issuing an emergency protective order. You are to have no contact with Jalen or Maya Davis. You are ordered to vacate the family residence and complete a court-approved anger management program before any consideration of supervised visitation. Curtis's face went pale, then red. Temporary custody, Judge Morrison continued, is granted to Denise Williams, the children's maternal aunt, pending a full custody hearing. Ms. Chen, I trust you'll coordinate the transition. Sandra nodded. Yes, Your Honor. The judge looked at Jalen one more time. Something softened in her face. Son, you were very brave today. I'm sorry the system failed you before. We're going to try to do better. Jalen couldn't speak. His throat was too tight. Behind him, Maya sat in the front row, gripping Mama Rosa's hand. She didn't understand everything that had happened, but she understood the word safe. She understood they weren't going back. Court adjourned. Curtis was led out a side door, alone. Jalen walked into a crowd of leather and chrome, and for the first time in 6 months, he let himself cry. That courthouse victory was just the beginning. But it was enough for now. Enough to prove that sometimes, when the right people show up, the system works. If this story is hitting you in the chest, if you've ever known a kid like Jalen, or been a kid like Jalen, share this video. Every share helps more people find stories that remind them they're not alone. Now let's see what happens when Jalen finally gets to start over. Aunt Denise stepped off the plane at 6:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. She was smaller than Jalen remembered. 5'3", church dress wrinkled from the flight, hands clutching a worn purse like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Her eyes were red. She'd been crying the whole way from Georgia. But when she saw those kids waiting at the gate, she ran. Not walked, ran. 46 years old, bad knees. Didn't matter. She ran and dropped to her knees and pulled both of them into her arms so tight, Jalen thought his ribs might crack. My babies, she kept saying. My babies. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't come sooner. Maya burst into tears. Jalen didn't cry. He'd used up all his tears at the courthouse. But he held on. held on like he was drowning and she was solid ground. Behind them, Big Jack stood with the other bikers, watching, giving the family their moment. When Aunt Denise finally stood up, wiping her face, she turned to face him, this stranger in leather who'd saved her sister's children. "You're Jack," she said, not a question. "Yes, ma'am." She walked up to him, looked him in the eye, and then she hugged him too, this giant of a man in a biker vest, wrapped up in a church lady's arms. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for not looking away." Big Jack's voice was rough when he answered. "No thanks needed, ma'am. Just doing what's right." She stepped back, collected herself, put her hands on Jalen's shoulders. "We ready to go home?" Jalen looked at her. Home. He'd almost forgotten what that word was supposed to mean. "Yeah," he said quietly. "We're ready." The bikers didn't just wave goodbye at the airport. That's not who they were. Big Jack pulled Aunt Denise aside while Hank helped load the bags into a rental car. "Here's my number," he said, pressing a card into her hand. "Anything happens, anything at all, you call, day or night. We've also set up a fund. First month's therapy for both kids is covered. New clothes, school supplies, whatever they need." Aunt Denise stared at the card. "I can't accept—" "It's not charity," Big Jack said firmly. "It's an investment. These kids deserve a fresh start. Let us help them get it." She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "You're good people," she said. "I didn't know there were still good people like this." Big Jack shook her hand. Firm grip, steady eyes. "We're not disappearing, Ms. Denise. We're family now. That means we show up. Birthdays, graduations, hard days, we show up." He meant it. Every word. 4 weeks later. Macon, Georgia. Jalen's first day at Westside Middle School was a disaster. New kid, no friends, rumors already spreading because kids talk and parents talk more. By lunchtime, 3 boys had asked if it was true his dad used to beat him. By the end of the day, he'd gotten into a shoving match in the hallway and earned himself a trip to the principal's office. He sat in that plastic chair, waiting for Aunt Denise, certain that this was it. The beginning of the end. He'd messed this up too, just like he messed up everything. And the office door opened. It wasn't Aunt Denise. It was Big Jack. He walked in like he belonged there. Leather vest, gray beard, boots that thudded on the linoleum. The secretary's eyes went wide. The principal, Mr. Henderson, stood up from his desk, looking like he'd swallowed something sharp. "Can I help you?" Mr. Henderson asked. "I'm here for Jalen." Big Jack settled into the chair next to the boy, legs stretched out, perfectly calm. "His aunt asked me to come. Family friend." Mr. Henderson looked between them. The massive biker, the 12-year-old with scraped knuckles. "There was an incident," he started. "I heard." Big Jack cut him off. "I also heard 3 boys were harassing him about his personal history before he pushed back. That accurate?" Mr. Henderson hesitated. "Well, there were comments made." "And those boys? They in trouble too?" Silence. Big Jack nodded slowly. "Here's what I think should happen. Jalen apologizes for the shoving. The other boys apologize for running their mouths about things that aren't their business. Everyone gets a clean slate. Sound fair?" Mr. Henderson looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Big Jack's calm, steady gaze changed his mind. "That seems reasonable." "Good." Big Jack stood, put a hand on Jalen's shoulder. "Come on, son. Let's go home." They walked out together. Jalen didn't say anything until they reached the parking lot, where Big Jack's Harley sat gleaming in the afternoon sun. "You didn't have to come," Jalen said. "Yeah, I did. It's 800 miles. I know how far it is." Big Jack handed him a helmet. "Get on. Your aunt's making dinner, and Hank's bringing ribs." Jalen stared at the helmet, then at Big Jack. "You really meant it," he said. When you said you wouldn't disappear. Big Jack looked at him, no smile, but something warm in his eyes. I don't say things I don't mean. Now get on the bike. Those ribs aren't going to eat themselves. 6 weeks later. The backyard BBQ at Aunt Denise's was louder than anything that little house had ever seen. Hank stood at the grill, flipping burgers, with surprising delicacy for a man his size. Duke, who'd driven all the way from 3 states over, was teaching Jalen how to throw a spiral in the side yard. Mama Rosa sat on the porch steps, braiding Maya's hair, while the little girl chattered about her new teacher and her new best friend named Keisha. Aunt Denise watched from the kitchen window, shaking her head in amazement. Never thought I'd have a biker gang in my backyard, she murmured. Big Jack appeared beside her, holding 2 glasses of lemonade. We prefer motorcycle enthusiasts, she laughed. A real laugh, the first one in weeks. Whatever you call yourselves, you're good for those kids. They're good for us too. He handed her a glass. Gives us purpose. Reminds us why we do this. Outside, Duke threw a wobbly pass. Jalen caught it, stumbled, almost fell, then held it up triumphantly. Maya cheered from the porch. For a moment, it looked like a normal family gathering. Burgers and laughter and kids playing in the yard. But it wasn't normal. It was better. It was chosen. Maya slept through the night now, every night. No more screaming awake at 2 a.m., no more crawling into Jalen's bed because she heard footsteps that weren't there. She still kept the one-eared teddy bear close. But she didn't clutch it like a lifeline anymore. She held it like a friend. Jalen still had nightmares sometimes, still flinched at loud noises, still tensed when someone raised their voice. But it was getting better. The therapist, Dr. Williams, a kind woman with gray braids and a voice like warm tea, said healing wasn't a straight line. Some days forward, some days back. The important thing was to keep moving. He was moving. 8 weeks later. The phone rang at 7:15 on a Thursday evening. Aunt Denise answered. Her face changed, went tight. I understand you completed the program, she said carefully. But the court order is clear, no contact. Jalen was doing homework at the kitchen table. He looked up, saw her expression. His stomach dropped. I don't care what you think you deserve, Aunt Denise continued. These children are not... No, you listen to me, Curtis. You stay away from my family. If you call again, I'm calling the police. She hung up. Her hands were shaking. Jalen stood frozen. The old fear was back, crawling up his spine, tightening his chest, making his vision narrow. Curtis, his father, calling, wanting back in. Jalen, Aunt Denise said softly. Baby, it's okay. He's not... He said he was better before. Jalen's voice cracked. After the first time, he cried and said sorry and promised. Then it got worse. I know, honey. I know. He'll find a way. He always finds a way. Jalen. Aunt Denise crossed to him, took his hands. Look at me. He is not getting near you. Not ever again. Jalen looked at her, wanted to believe, but he'd believed before. Can we call Big Jack? She didn't hesitate. Of course. 1 hour later, 3 motorcycles rumbled down the quiet Georgia street and parked in front of Aunt Denise's house. Big Jack, Hank, Mama Rosa. They'd been halfway across the state when the call came. Turned around immediately. Jalen watched from the window as they dismounted. 3 figures in leather, standing in the golden evening light, like sentinels. Big Jack looked up. Saw Jalen in the window, nodded once. I'm here. We're here. You're not alone. Curtis never showed. Maybe he drove by and saw the bikes. Maybe he thought better of it. Maybe something in him finally understood that the rules had changed. That these children had protection now, real protection, the kind that showed up. Whatever the reason, the streets stayed quiet. Jalen watched the bikers until dark. They didn't leave, didn't go inside, just stood there, talking quietly, watching, a wall between him and whatever might come. Around 9 p.m., Aunt Denise brought out coffee. Big Jack thanked her, took a cup, and went right back to watching. Around 11 p.m., Jalen finally went to bed. He could hear the low rumble of their voices through the window, the occasional clink of a coffee mug. He slept. And in the morning, when he woke up, the bikes were gone. But there was a note tucked under the front door. He didn't show, knew he wouldn't. Call any time. Jack. Jalen read it 3 times. Then he folded it carefully and put it in his drawer, next to the patch from his vest that said, "Protected." He wasn't alone anymore. He finally believed it. 6 months later, Jalen walked into the community center gym in Macon, Georgia. Same kid. Different everything. He was taller now. Growth spurt hit him hard over the summer. His shoulders were broader, his eyes were clearer, and draped over those shoulders was a leather vest 2 sizes too big, black and worn and heavy with meaning. The room was full of bikers, not just Big Jack's crew. Members from chapters across 4 states had ridden in for this. 37 motorcycles parked outside. 37 people who'd heard the story, who'd wanted to be there when a boy became something more. Big Jack stood at the front of the room, Hank on his right, Mama Rosa on his left, Duke in the back, arms crossed, almost smiling. Maya sat in the front row next to Aunt Denise, clutching that same one-eared teddy bear. She was grinning so hard her cheeks hurt. Jalen walked forward. His boots echoed on the wooden floor. His heart was pounding, but not from fear. Not anymore. He stopped in front of Big Jack. "Turn around," Big Jack said. Jalen turned, faced the crowd, felt Big Jack's hands smooth the vest across his shoulders, adjusting it, making it right. "Read what it says," Big Jack said. Jalen reached back, touched the patch stitched across his shoulder blades. He didn't need to look. He'd memorized it weeks ago. "Protected," he said. His voice was quiet but steady. "It says protected." The room was silent. Big Jack stepped around to face him, put both hands on Jalen's shoulders. "That patch means something," he said. "It means you're not alone. It means if anyone ever tries to hurt you again, they answer to all of us. It means you've got family, real family, the kind you choose, for the rest of your life." Jalen's eyes burned. He didn't fight it this time. "I'm one of you now," he said. Big Jack nodded. "You always were. Now it's just official." The room erupted. Cheers, applause, boots stomping on the floor. Maya jumped up and ran to her brother, throwing her arms around him. Aunt Denise was crying again, happy tears this time, the good kind. And Jalen stood there, in that vest, surrounded by people who'd shown up when no one else would, and felt something he'd almost forgotten existed. Safe, home, loved. It wasn't just a vest, it was armor, a promise, a new beginning. 3 years later, Jalen was 15 when he learned to ride. Small bike at first, a beat-up Honda 250 that Hank had rebuilt in his garage. Nothing fancy. Engine sounded like a sewing machine compared to the Harleys, but it was his. First time he took it down the road, he wobbled so bad he almost dumped it in a ditch. Big Jack rode beside him, shouting instructions, laughing when Jalen overcorrected and nearly took out a mailbox. By the end of summer, he could ride smooth. By the following year, he was keeping up with the crew on back roads, wind in his face, engine rumbling beneath him. Every time he rode, he thought about that night. The cracked porch, the bare feet, the rumble of engines in the dark that changed everything. Maya graduated middle school on a sunny day in May. The gymnasium was packed with families, cameras flashing, kids in caps and gowns, too big for their heads. Maya walked across the stage, collected her diploma, and looked out at the crowd. Front row, 5 bikers in full leather, standing out like wolves in a sheep pen. Big Jack, Hank, Mama Rosa, Duke, and Jalen, now 16, wearing his own vest with pride. Maya grinned and threw them a little wave. Mama Rosa blew her a kiss. Hank actually smiled, a rare sight that made the parent next to him do a double take. Aunt Denise sat beside them, dabbing her eyes with a tissue, wondering how her life had gotten so wonderfully strange. Word spread, not through newspapers or social media, through whispers, through kids who knew someone who'd been helped, through parents at their breaking point who heard about a group that actually showed up, a single mother in Alabama whose ex kept violating the restraining order. 3 motorcycles appeared in her driveway and stayed for a week. The ex stopped coming around. A teenage girl in Tennessee, afraid to testify against her stepfather. Bikers escorted her to court, filled the gallery, watched her find her voice on the stand. The stepfather got 8 years. A little boy in Mississippi, bounced between foster homes, forgotten by the system. The crew found him a family, showed up to every single hearing until the adoption went through, one story at a time, one kid at a time, the ripples spreading outward. Here's the truth about that night on Delancey Street. The real villain wasn't just Curtis. Curtis was a symptom, a broken man who broke his children because no one stopped him. But the deeper villain, the one that let it happen, was a world that looked away. Neighbors who heard screaming and turned up their TVs. Teachers who noticed bruises and believed convenient lies. A system so overwhelmed that kids fell through the cracks and shattered at the bottom. The bikers didn't fix that system. They couldn't. But they stood in the gaps. They showed up when the system failed. They proved that protection doesn't require a badge or a title, just the willingness to act. And Jalen, that barefoot boy on the porch who whispered, "My dad hurts us," into the empty night, he found his voice, testified, healed, grew, started mentoring younger kids who'd been through what he'd been through, told his story so others would know they weren't alone. A single sentence had unleashed a force that reshaped lives. Thank you for riding with us today. If this story touched you, if you know a kid who's scared, or you were once that kid yourself, share it. Subscribe. Hit that bell. Because every view, every share, every comment helps us reach the next person who needs to hear that help exists. Tell us in the comments, what would you have done? And remember, the rumble you hear in the dark might not be trouble coming. It might be help on the way. Jalen was a boy who had nothing but his sister's hand and a truth too heavy to carry alone. They gave him a voice. They gave him a family. They gave him wings. And now he flies.